So when trying to make the best possible costume, the first thing that we do is get the clothing for underneath, since you're trying to recreate the character basically from head to toe. These pants that we got and this shirt were from Walmart. They were $8 each. It's a very standard light gray jogging pants and t-shirt. There's also a long sleeve shirt for the colder weather, a long sleeve tee. I just can't find it right now. The reason that we do the underclothing first is because there's a limited selection of colors out there in terms of clothing. So in this case, Starscream, most of his body, whether he's a jet or a robot, is a light gray. And from that point onwards, once you start actually constructing the cardboard portions, it's very easy to go to the local hardware store and match the paint rather than doing it the other way around. If you choose a color for the cardboard and then go out trying to shop for clothing, I promise you, you will never be able to match the colors properly. So we always start with the clothing first. So as you see here, it's just a regular jogging pants and a t-shirt. Now with Starscream, he has a red pelvic region, so originally what we did is we just got a pair of oversized underwears that he could wear on top. Now as time went on, we realized it was a little bit difficult for him and for us to change him all the time. So to simplify the process, what we did is we actually went to the fabric store and got a piece of red fabric and sewed it right onto the pants. We also got some fabric, a very small piece, to also do some of the design elements on the actual character. And we did this simply because we're not adding any type of cardboard or anything clunky to the arms or legs, so that it makes it super easy for the kids to walk around and hopefully not get too tired. Originally we were going to do this for Halloween, but it turned out to be an all-year event, and these jogging pants tended to get a little bit hot. So what we also did, we got a pair of shorts, also from Walmart, $6, and made a pair just like the pants, except a little bit shorter, so that in the warmer months, the poor kid's not going to overheat. Now, once finished building this and went to started making Skywarp, again, you learn from your mistakes. So here are Skywarp's pants, and instead of doing everything twice, we went to Mountain Warehouse and got a pair of convertible pants, so that we only have to sew the underwear region once. One pair of pants instead of two, and if it gets too hot, you just zip it off. So that's for warm weather, and that's for colder weather. I'm assuming that many of you are making these costumes for Halloween, and you also have to think a little bit about your kid going to school. And while they'll be able to put on a nice show for the classroom, realistically, they're not going to be able to wear the costume for the whole day, sitting at their desk doing their regular stuff. We made a vest. It unfolds, so it will come all the way out here, and you just cut out a circle. We attached some elastic bands after it was all done, and just sewed on a basic design of what the character looks like. So here is the chest with the air fan intakes and the canopy, and on the back we did his shoulders and just a little logo to keep things interesting. And again, this was done mainly so that once the regular school day starts, your kid's not going to be the only one that's not in costume. And last was the shoes. Shoes are very important. Starscream has blue feet. it's very hard to find a pair of shoes that will match what you need, just like the clothes. So again, my recommendation is before you start doing any kind of building, any kind of painting, settle on the types of shoes and clothes, and then once you've got those colors figured out, going to the local hardware store and matching the paint will be super easy. Starscream has a very noticeable and iconic blue forearms, so that's definitely something that you might want to consider to get the overall look. Those gloves were made using the same material that we used for the shins and the knees, and basically what we did is, using the same fabric, we took our kid's hand and we traced around, and we cut out 4 pieces of the blue fabric and sewed 2 of each of them together. And once you're finished sewing, you just turn everything inside out so that the seams, the stitching and the seams are all on the inside. So now we have all the pieces together for what I call the classroom costume. And now, once your child is in school all day, they'll be able to stay in character. And most importantly, you've got the colors figured out so that once we get into actual construction, that these are the colors that you're going to be matching all the rest of the paint with. So this is the secret to my designs. These are paint stir sticks that you can get from Home Depot or any other hardware store. You get these for free whenever you buy a gallon of paint. Usually you can get about 6 of them from anybody working at the counter without raising too many eyebrows. This is a 1" by 12" stick, super lightweight, flexible but very strong, very easy to cut, very easy to drill. This is a larger one that you might want to use for older children, past ages 5 or 6, but same thing. This one is a 1.5". I forget exactly how long. You'll need at least about 10 of these and 2 of these. Invest in a good glue gun. And here, just a regular wire coat hanger. In my case, my boy's shoulders are 10 inches. So I've measured out to 10 inches and we're going to cut off the extra. So this piece is actually what goes here. There's about a 1" overhang on each side, and that's essentially what the whole costume will be resting on. So these larger pieces that we use is going to be for the length of the body. So this will be the top of the shoulders and this will be their bum. Now one thing I'd like to do is to make it a little bit shorter. My boy's bum finishes somewhere around here, and I like to make this about 1 or 2 inches shorter so that when the tail folds up, their bum will be exposed and they'll be able to sit down. It's very important for them to be able to sit down, maybe not on a couch, but at least on the corner of a chair or something, because they're going to need to take a break every now and then. So in our case, my measurement is 15 inches. So I cut this one to 15 inches and then we're going to cut the other one as well. This is the shoulder piece. Just put a very liberal amount of glue. It's very hot, so please be careful. And then we will put it together. I purposefully left a space here at the top, which is exactly the length of one of the sticks, which you will see in just a moment why. It's also a good idea to get yourself some type of a square to make sure that all your angles are straight. You want a nice 90-degree angle. So now we've got our basic frame to start with. So this is the length of the body, this is the width of the shoulders. And we want to make sure, take the measurement, so that's 10 inches wide. So the space in between, in this case, is 8 inches, and then up here it's also the same, 8 inches. A nice square, very important. The measurements for your child might be different depending on how wide their shoulders are, but that's the basic idea. Next, what we're going to do is put on these guys here. So my motto is always better too much than too little. Now I've cut out a little notch here to fit nicely with this crossbar. Oopsie. All right. And then you just will fit this groove into here. So what we end up with is a frame, a variation of like an I-beam. So you've got strength this way and this way. So I cut out two smaller pieces of the regular sized sticks, and I glued one here. You just glue along here and here. Later on, there will be a reinforcement to keep this part together, so don't worry about it too much. What's most important is that the long continuous piece is here and it's accepting all of the flex in this direction. So we'll just add on this other piece. What we've done now is, using some of the little extra pieces that we cut off before, we put in some spacers, as you can see, here, here, and here. And we also put in two small pieces right over here, just to close out the corner. The reason that we did this is we've got two of these pieces, and these will act as the framework for the outside shell of the top of the plane or the back of the robot, and it's going to create a space for the kid's back and bum to actually fit inside. Eventually this will all be covered over with cardboard, and it also gives a nicer shape to the airplane. There is an important reason why I did put little spacers. We do want to make sure that this line is flush with here, but these holes on both sides are very important. That's the part that will be hanging off of the kid's shoulders. We want this space open so that ease of access, but also if we need to make any adjustments afterwards, even after the costume is fully assembled, it will give an opportunity for you to make any adjustments as necessary. This will just help keep everything straight as you're adding the cardboard. Once the cardboard is in place, the cardboard's actually going to be doing most of the load bearing on this section. Alright, so if you're kind of getting an idea, this will be the front of the plane, this is the back of the plane, we're going to have wings here, and this is the fuselage. So now it's time for us to put in the hinges for the big wings, and these are the hinges here. They're the cheapest ones I could find from Home Depot. They're 1 inch wide. They sit very nicely widthwise here. We do have to make an adjustment on them because there is a problem. What we want is the hinges to sit underneath when we put in the air ducts here, the air intakes, and these would be the wings. The problem is that if you want to hide them, you're going to have a problem because the hinge is going to squeeze the cardboard. So we do have to make a modification on these, which I will show you in just a second. So fortunately I have something to hold it in place, the hinge in place, and basically what we're doing is putting it down a little bit and then folding the rest out. This is probably the hardest part about making the costume, and we can use a hammer to make that hinge nice and flush. But basically what we end up with is this. So, if you can find a different kind of hinge, all the power to you. I was not able to. So now when we have the cardboard sitting down, the hinge is sticking out. You don't see any of the flanges underneath, but it will make sure that when the wings are folding up, that they're not going to be rubbing onto each other. You've got a good amount of clearance. Those look close enough. So these pieces will actually be attached to the large wings. I've cut them shorter to about 11 inches. Now your measurements might change, might be different. The reason I did 11 inches is I'm trying to figure out where along here to put the hinge. Now this is the front of the plane, this is the back of the plane. And what we want to do is put the hinge somewhere more or less so that you're going to have approximately 5 inches sticking out here. This will be the air intakes. And when you fold it down the other way, this one is actually the more important of the two. You want at least 2 inches of clearance here. Okay. So if you can find that sweet spot to get about 2.5 inches of clearance here, and to get about 5 inches of overhang here, again with a larger child you might want 6 inches or maybe even 7, but with the size that we're doing, 5 inches is about as far as I want to go. What I use here are number 632s and the length 3/8 inch. These are quite small screws. Important that they have a flat head. When we put the screws, okay, I've already drilled some holes. So you find that sweet spot, the hinge sits in there, and then you can line up your holes. Now I find the flat heads are quite nice, especially when you're folding the wings. It won't touch. Now the 3/8 I got so that the screws are just long enough to accept a nut and not stick out too much. I found that to be the ideal length. That way nothing is poking your kid in the back while they're actually wearing the costume. And then we have our basic hinge. Make sure everything is centered properly, because if it's not straight now, it will create problems later. So once you're satisfied that it's centered, tighten everything up, and then do the same for the other side. Okay, so now that we've got both of the wing hinges attached, I took another piece of stir stick. This one is 10 inches wide, so it's basically the same width as everywhere. And what I want to do is to glue it onto here, and we can just attach it to the underside. Make sure everything is lined up and square. But that's essentially how the wings are going to fold. Oh, one other thing. When we screw these in, I advise using flathead screws. But even with flathead screws, depending on how you bent these, it might not sit flush. So what you can do is go ahead and just drill a couple holes to help accommodate the screw heads, to make sure that everything sits nice and flat. Hopefully you saved the little triangles that you cut off from here and here. We're going to use those to make the tailpiece. So I'm about halfway done, and what I did is, since this one is 10 inches wide, I made this 10.5 inches wide. You want to give yourself about a half an inch extra, and it's one side looks kind of like this. We use the triangle pieces to reinforce the connection between those two. So we'll go ahead and do the other side. And what this piece is for, it will attach the engine exhausts and the tail fins. It will basically attach something like this, and we'll be moving, folding something like this. Okay, so we've put in some screws here for the tailpiece, and basically this is the movement that we want to get going. I find the easiest way is to just make a square using some of the other extra pieces. Draw an X, that's the center of your hole. Do that on both sides, and we have a basic functioning hinge. Later on, not right now, we will put a couple washers inside, and that will keep the pieces from rubbing against each other and make sure it moves nice and smoothly. Okay, so one thing that we also did here is we took one of the old odds and ends. Don't throw anything away, they come in useful. Just like the triangle pieces, I took a little square piece and put one right here and here. The reason that we did that, well, let's take a look. Also, this is the finished frame for the tail. I also curved this side a little bit here, that one quadrant. The reason that we did that is that once we put this on and we have the hinge, it's going to turn. It can bend up. This little piece acts as a lock so that it can't bend up too much, but more importantly, it has to lock down. We don't want the tail to fall down. Once we're in airplane mode, the tail goes down, but not any further. Now I use slightly bigger screws here. I think these are called machine screws. I can't say for sure. But the rule, you can use any screws and matching nut. The only rule is that it has to be able to go through two thicknesses of wood, and still have enough on the other side to accept a nut. So we'll just screw that in, and we've got a nut here. This nut, it's a matching nut, but it's called a lock nut. There's a plastic ring inside, which is very useful because it will make sure that it doesn't work itself loose. so you can keep the hinge loose, but the actual nut and bolt will be tight. So here we have the basic movement. So it locks up and it locks down. Locks up, locks down. Also, you want to make sure that you give yourself approximately 1.5 inches of clearance between the top of the airplane body and the tail when it's folded up. Okay, but that's basically what it's supposed to look like. And then the big wings will rest on here. So when your child is crouching on the ground, the top of their shoulders are here and their bum fits somewhere in here. The actual frame of the aircraft will be higher than their bum so that they can sit down properly, and then when they transform on the ground, you've got about 3 to 4 inches of space that will accommodate their bum and their feet. Okay, one small addition is the back here. It wasn't holding as strongly as I had hoped. So what I did is I put in a popsicle stick, 2 popsicle sticks, one on each side. This one has already been cut to size, and we'll cut this one to size as well. Ultimately, this area here will be all cut out to make more room for their legs and their bum. We'll have a crossbar going here. So yeah, for 2 extra popsicle sticks, you get a lot more strength. So that's something that I would go with there. Alright guys, and then we're just gonna cut that out to make it all nice and smooth. So the last piece that we need to build is for the nose, attaching the nose. So I've got a piece here which I measured. The measurement's going to be different for everyone, but this is the distance when your child is wearing the frame and they're perfectly crouched down. This stick touches the floor, just barely touches the floor. So that's the measurement. In this case, it's 8 inches. Could be a little bit more or less for you guys. But when your child is crouching down in the transformed position as a vehicle, measure down how long that is and make a stick that length. And we have to cut a diagonal, just like we did here. Now that is going to attach in there. And you're going to need one more piece which lines up with this line, and something like that. Alrighty, so I'm going to go ahead and glue everything. That's basically what it's supposed to look like. You can see how everything fits together. Last thing we need to do is just to clean up that part. So what we do is follow the line. See where that line goes, which is right here. So we're going to do the same thing on that side. Draw a line, and then we cut it. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then we just sand everything smooth. So this is Starscream. Alright. We're going to finish off the frame by making shoulder harnesses, the part that will actually be hanging onto the child's shoulders. And for that, we use just a regular wire coat hanger. And what I do is take the straight piece, get yourself a nice set of wire cutters, and we'll just cut the ends. This part we don't need, so we can throw it away. And let's see, this one is about 16, maybe 17 inches, which is fine. We're going to cut it into two pieces. So let's say if it's 16, let's do 8. I think I need sharper wire cutters. There we go. We'll put them together, and we want them to be the same size, so we'll just cut off the extra. There we go. So we're gonna do bend the coat hanger to a certain size. So basically what we want is for it to fit more or less like this. You want this there to be a slightly longer piece sticking out from that end, and here we're just going to bend that. So we've got our two wire frames for the shoulder harnesses, and they will sit like this. What I do for the last part, I'll just take a can of spray paint, and this seems to work pretty well, and we'll just curve it a little bit, so that will give you a rough estimate of how it will sit on the child's shoulders. And then we install it onto our frame. Now you have these gaps here. The reason we have those gaps is every child is different, and you might need to make some adjustments, and this will let us go in or out, or even as you know, wear and tear, things might move and adjust, so you're giving yourself the option to make the adjustment later without having to do any major reassembly work. And we basically slide that in like so. Now if you remember, I just mentioned you want a little bit of a curve here. You got to find that perfect curve. It's got to stick. You don't want it straight, but it's got to be small enough to fit inside of that gap. Oops, there we go. And then we pull it all the way up. So there we go. So essentially, the entire weight of the costume will be resting on your child's shoulders. I sure hope you can see that. So now that we've got the basic framework done of the shoulder harness, we've got to pad them. And what I use, I try to find the cheapest stuff possible. I've got some 1-inch weather stripping. This one is adhesive on one side, which makes working with it a little bit more helpful. And then we just guesstimate how big of a piece we'll need. You don't want the wire sticking right out, so give yourself like an extra inch or ½ inch, and then we will cut it. Seems that scissors work just as well, maybe even better. So we've got our 4 pieces of self-adhesive foam, and what we do, peel off the backing, start from the top, try to have a clean workspace, and just put it along the middle, right down the middle of the foam. We'll take our other piece, stick it together, we're going to cut off the extra like so. We use black electrical tape and we just wrap the whole thing together. You could tape off the ends also if you want, but it's not really necessary. So there we have our first shoulder harness, and we'll go ahead and make the second one. What I did is I marked off a center point just to help me visually a little bit. I'm going to put them about here, which is about 1.5 inches from the inside of this frame. Again, these are adjustable, so we don't have to worry about a final position just yet. These harnesses, you're going to have to find, it's going to be different with every child. You're going to have to find that sweet spot. You want to go obviously away from the neck, but you don't want to go too far out so that it doesn't interfere with the movement of their arms. To secure them in place, what I use, what you can use are twist ties. I actually have some metal twine here, which I had handy, but you don't need to go out and buy metal twine. These are a little bit thicker than the regular twist ties that you would get from like the grocery store on a loaf of bread or something. Those might not be strong enough, but the ones that you get from toy packaging are super duper. So what we do is we will fish it underneath there, and loop it around there, and then tighten it up. And basically what these zip ties do is they keep it in place, and they keep the harness from pulling forward. So it doesn't actually carry a whole lot of weight, but if ever you have a problem, we'll have to do some servicing. Very easy to undo and take everything out, make whatever adjustments you need. So we'll go ahead and do the other one now. Same thing. So you want to go as tight as you can. And if you want, you can either clip it away, or for now, until we're sure about the spacing, so you don't have to use new zip ties later, we can just hide those away. And there you have it. There will be some movement sideways, don't worry about it. It will conform to the shape of your child.